Coucou tout le monde! Welcome back to Unintentionally Frenchified. This week I'm tackling some very weird American shit. It is not until you leave your reality that you realize what you think is actually normal might not be that normal. The reality check for me was moving to Europe. I have done a lot of culture shock videos about moving from the US to France, but this video really focuses on some of the weirdest things in the US that Americans don't even realize are weird. So let's not waste any time and just get to the weird part. But France, watch out, because I have a video planned this month to talk about the weird French things that you don't even realize are weird. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, you know what to do. Otherwise, let's jump right into it. C'est parti. Would you give your credit card to a stranger? Would you trust your credit card with someone you didn't know when you weren't next to them? Americans do, and they do it pretty regularly. Based on a study done in 2017, the average American family eats out 3 times a week. And when you eat out in the States, if it's not a fast food restaurant, you sit down at your table, you eat, the waiter comes, shows you the bill, you decide if you're okay with the price, nothing wrong on the receipt, and then you hand them the receipt back with your credit card, and they take the credit card to a machine somewhere in the back room. You don't see what's going on, and then they bring back a slip for you to sign to say you approved with your credit card. So basically, you don't see what they're doing with your credit card for a good 5 minutes. Technically, somebody could write down your name, your card number, your expiration date, and the 3 little code on the back. They could write everything down and have a fun little shopping journey on Amazon that same day. By the way, this recently happened to my mother. I used to think that this was completely normal, guys. Giving your credit card away to somebody, not seeing it. How else would it work to pay a bill? And then I got to Europe and I realized that the machines to run your credit card are small and transportable. So people come to your table with the machine and you're the one who puts your credit card in the machine and taps a little code or signs. And nobody ever takes your credit card but you. Even in like the most safest countries in Europe, I have never been asked to take my credit card out of my own sight. This just doesn't happen. People don't trust other people with their money. And we shouldn't either in the US. This is so bizarre. Okay, TV ads in the US are the worst. Like seriously, the worst. There are so many ads. It is so exhausting. Thank the Lord for streaming, which still has quite a bit of ads, but at least is a little bit better, right? So this isn't really about general ads, but let's get even more specific and let's talk about medical ads. Did you ever think it was really strange, those ads where you have like a grandfather and he's playing in the yard with his grandkids and his wife is watching lovingly with some handmade lemonade, and then all of a sudden this very creepy voice in the background says, Danny is living his best life because he's taken Shawada and Shawada has made his life better. And you too should ask your doctor to take Shawada. And then, as Danny's swinging his grandkids in the air, you hear the creepy voice say, and please don't take Shawada. If you have a heart disease, it will kill you. If you have blue eyes, it will kill you. If your second toe is longer than your first toe, it will kill you. You will become depressed. You will suffer. You will die. When I lived in the US, I just thought they were kind of weird how they would go from like lighthearted, beautiful, corny, like ad to all of a sudden very dark and depressing and negative. And now that I live somewhere else where these type of advertisements are literally illegal, not only do I still think that the way that they go from lighthearted to dark is very weird, I also just think the ads in general are very weird. I mean, should we be shoving medical ads in people's faces all the time? Should we be making the health industry a total cash machine? Shouldn't my doctor, who did years and years and years of studies, be the one telling me what medicine I should be taking instead of me telling them what medicine I want to take? Especially the medicine that has like 50,000 side effects that are most likely going to kill me, all of them at once. Very weird, America. All right, you cannot grow up in the US and not have a bit of sports culture. You don't necessarily have to love sports, but sports is a massive entertainment in the US. So it's not just the actual sporting event. It's the cheerleaders, it's the music, it's the mascot, it's the drinks, it's the food, it's everything, right? So even if you don't come from a family that loves sports or you're not that into sports, you've probably been to a game or two. Like a lot of sports, baseball in the US has a world championship, a World Series. Up until now, all of this is pretty normal because when you think of world championships, you've got lots of sports. I mean, you've got the World Cup in soccer, you've got the World Championships of rugby, or you've got like the Worlds in gymnastics. I mean, most sports have a world championship. So the World Series in baseball doesn't seem very weird until you leave the US and you realize that the World Series of baseball doesn't actually include the world. Now, I've had quite a few number of discussions with some non-Americans about this because people outside of the US find this notion very bizarre. So I know some of you in the comments will say that this series was named after a New York newspaper, and so that's why it got its name that way, and so it's not that big of a deal. But that's like 100 years now. At some point, I feel like we could change the very misleading name if we really wanted to. Or some people say that we draft players from around the world, and so therefore, even if the teams come from America and Canada, they're still international players. But I don't think any other world championship works that way specifically. And there's lots of examples in other sports. I mean, you take soccer in other countries and it's very international between the different leagues in each country. They recruit international players to play in the French league. But then when they win the French league, they call them winners of the French league, not winners of the world, even though they're international players. So I'm not sure that that's the strongest argument either. Americans get such a bad rap for our we're number one, we're champions of the world attitude sometimes. And I just don't think that tournaments like these that aren't necessarily including the rest of the world but make world champions are helping our favor for these. So I am much a lobbyist for trying to change the name of that tournament, please. Politics has been kind of whack in the US lately, but politics was already kind of nuts before 2016, and I actually did a video this election year about the differences in the presidential elections in the US and France. So if that interests you, check out that video. But as I said, before 2016, there were still weird things going on. So for example, in the US, we have the left wing and the right wing. The right tends to be more conservative. They defend things like pro-life or anti-immigration, and they tend to support things, keeping things the way that they are. And the left tends to push for more progressive policies. Think free education or free healthcare, etc. Now, having a left wing and a right wing is all fine and dandy and not very weird compared to anybody else. But once you move to Europe, you start questioning what the left and right are really fighting for in the US, because most of those policies are just basic human rights in a majority of all the other OECD countries. Take France, for example, because I live there. The right wing wouldn't even dream of trying to override universal health care or free education, because those are things that are basic human rights for citizens in France, and everyone should have access to education and everybody should have access to medical care if they're sick. So the right wing will tend to defend things like getting rid of inheritance taxes so that they can make more money, or the left will tend to support things like taking power away from the landlords and upping their retirement funds. These are the kind of issues that they start to really debate about. And in the US, when people are saying that, for example, Joe Biden is a radical left president, it's really weird because in Europe, for example, he would be right wing. In France, he would be conservative. I mean, if you want left wing, you'd really need to get like Bernie Sanders up there with his mittens, or someone even more left than him. In France, in the last presidential election, the most left party was an anti-capitalist party, so like very left. So just not at all the same things that we debate about in the US. I saw a really great TikTok that went viral from a girl in Germany who did this comparison between political parties in Germany and in the US. So I'll put that link below. You should definitely check it out if this point especially interests you. It's pretty mind-blowing and it makes you go, America? Are we like 100 years behind everyone else? Can you drive down an American street without seeing red, white, and blue flags flying everywhere? In the Midwest, where I'm from, it is pretty hard not to. Americans tend to grow up with flags surrounding them everywhere. And I'm not just talking flags on state buildings. I see flags on houses. I see them on cars. I see them on people. I see them on clothes. Hello, Old Navy, anyone? I see them on pets. I mean, flags are everywhere. We even pledged allegiance to the flag my entire time growing up in school. I think now, depending on where you go to school, this isn't necessarily something that you have to do, but still, there are flags everywhere. And then after moving to Europe, I realized that flags here only fly from schools and government buildings. I have never once in France seen someone drive down the street and have like a little flag waving behind the car, or imagine like a moped in Paris, like zipping around Paris with a tiny little French flag or something. Like, no. The French and a lot of other European countries don't see flying flags as a sign of patriotism. They see flying flags as a sign of nationalism. And while I still love me a good old American flag flying in the wind, when you start realizing that people link loving your country with flying an obsessive amount of flags, you start wondering if that's not representative of loving the US or just a little bit weird. All right, guys, I did my 5. That's a wrap for today. I can't wait to hear in the comments below what you guys thought. If you think there's some that I left out, if you agree, disagree, I'll find you in the comments below. Everybody have a great week, and I will be back la semaine prochaine. Bisous!